Good evening, everybody. This is OL Nation, session 13. We focus on thought leadership, knowledge sharing, professional networking, and just taking care of one another, building bridges across the batches. Welcome, everybody. We have a fantastic session lined up for you. A lot of work has gone into it, getting our special guest for the evening. But before I go on to that, I will introduce my fellow colleagues on the panel today. We have Johnny Paul, Vindhya 1970, President of the Earl Laurentians Association. We have the Headmaster, Mr. K. Prabhakaran, all the way from Lovedale. And finally, we have Kalpana Kuttaiah, Pankaj 1980, my co-host for this evening. Welcome, folks. I think I'm waiting for Kalpana to come on right now. Okay, here you go. Kalpana, please unmute yourselves, everybody. Over to you, Kalpana.
Good evening, good morning, and welcome. It is the pleasure of OL Nation and we are delighted to bring our guest speaker today, the Honorable Finance Minister, Government of Tamil Nadu, P. Thiaga Rajan, Sumeru, 1983. I am so relieved I do not have to read his bio and introduce him to you all. You all are very familiar with him, and to many of us, Laurentians, we also know him as Thiaga. For most of us who studied in school in the 70s and 80s, we had friends, siblings, cousins across all our batches, up and below some of us, and that was the case for Thiaga and me as well. We had cousins in school that were interwoven between all of our batches, and in the process, we've had common friends, played bridge together as young adults, kept up with each other when we joined for higher studies in the United States, and followed Thiaga's career all along, and right up to bringing him on to this session of OL Nation. Welcome, Thiaga, and happy you could join us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Before we proceed, I'd like the Headmaster, Mr. Prabhakaran, to welcome Thiaga and have a line or two for him. You're on mute, sir. Please unmute. And
good evening, everyone. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to be here in OL Nation team. And the team has worked so meticulously, and this is the 13th session. And I tried my level best to be part of each session. And there are a lot of takeaway from your sessions, ranging from medical to educational, counseling, expedition, etc. It has been wonderful getting all this experience. And of course, today's event, Dr. Palanivel, Thiaga Rajan, Sumeru batch of 83. It's a great honor to welcome you, sir, here. First of all, be there in a position of leadership is very, very important in any situation, because with the kind of experience, especially with the kind of experience you have in various national and multinational companies, that will definitely give a boost, and it will definitely take the institute, the state affair of the state to a greater height. We as a community, I personally as a headmaster, we are very proud of you, sir, and we'll be there with you. And of course, we would like to see your contribution in the field of finance, human resource management, and various other fields in the years to come. And definitely, this will be a great contribution to the state of Tamil Nadu. Thank you once again for calling me, and wish you best of luck, Dr. Palanivel, Thiaga Rajan, and pleasure where you are heading the most important portfolio, which is finance and which is need of the hour at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Johnny, would you like to, being the president of OLA?
Dear old Laurentians, as India is seemingly coming out of this disastrous second wave of the pandemic, we, the OLA fraternity too, feel humble that we have set out in a small way towards reaching out to the needy amongst us during this crisis, ensuring that their needs are met and thereby trying our best to put the smile back on their faces. If coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. The core purpose of our coming together as the OL family becomes meaningful only when we embrace one another through our sharing and caring and become one family in the true sense. The COVID response team we formed recently has done some commendable work in bringing timely aid to so many to battle the pandemic. I sincerely thank all the volunteers and our community at large for coming forward and pitching in with their contributions. Recently, the OLA has also served the role of a facilitator in enabling support for the OLs in need. By spreading the word across our platform, after some diligence, with the help of batch reps and classmates, thereby leading to OLs contributing to them. Let us keep these good initiatives going well. Let each of our gatherings, like the OL Nation and the OL Assembly, remind us that the relevance of staying connected as a pack. We wish to have the entire OL community, the world over, under one umbrella. Let us all thrive professionally and personally, holding aloft our proud OL badge. Today, it is yet another cherished moment of the OLA, as we honor and celebrate the momentous journey from privilege to public service of our fellow OL, Dr. Palanivel Thiaga Rajan, Sumero 1983, Minister for Finance and Human Resources Management, Government of Tamil Nadu. I cannot hold back my excitement to hear it from the horse's mouth. So, dear OLs, let us get going with this session 13 of the OL Nation. I equally appreciate your enthusiastic response to our other events on the OL Assembly and hope to see you all there next month. Once again, greetings and best wishes to all of you, especially to our chief guest, Mr. Thiaga Rajan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Thank
your
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you, Johnny, and thank you, Mr. Prabhakaran. Thank you so much. And obviously, we'll be seeing you in a month's time on OL Nation and 10th of July on OL Assembly 2.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So, now, Kalpana, over to you. Sorry.
I have a bit of housekeeping for everybody
Yes.
who's the live session. So you have an opportunity to type your question to Thiaga on the chat browser that you have, that you might be watching on. So please do so. And we'll try our level best to try get to as many questions as we can. We have volunteers who are helping us feed the questions to us. But we thank everybody who sent their questions in ahead of time. That really helped us very much. To each and every one of you, thank you, thank you, thank you. There were lots and lots of questions. And what we've worked very hard in the last few days is to organize it into 3 segments so that we can have 15 minutes Q&A with Thiaga. So the first segment is on his professional life, what he did after school, what he did up to being as a 14-year as a student, up to being a banker. The second segment will be on his leadership and his current involvement in politics. And the third one will be on the lighter side of life, personal stories and memories about Lovedale. So at the end of each of these segments, we will try answer a question that's probably relevant to the segment. If we are short on time, we will continue on and try catch it at the very end. So to get us started, Rohan, please go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kalpana. And Thiaga, once again, welcome. And we are really happy that you spent a lot of time doing prep. You were always on time, just in time, but always there. Thank you so much for being with us. And we start now in the first part of the segment, which is going to cover your professional life from our point of view, of course. What we have done is, like Kalpana said, is combine several questions to have something in common. So the first question we have for you is, please touch upon what you did after leaving school till you entered politics.
First of all, thank you for having me. I must mention that I'm just so amazed and impressed at the amount of preparatory work that goes into these sessions. I do one of these a day or more, and so it's hard for me to get that priority to preparing for these. I must confess that I only read these questions about 10 minutes ago. Apologies, but that's how busy my day has been last few days. The assembly was in session. But first, I must commend everybody who works on this and the amount of effort they've tried to put in, including to coach me. Rashid sent me a document on how to appear and all that, which again, I apologize, I've not been able to follow. So all the downsides are my limitation. Whatever comes out well is because so many people put so much effort into it. As for what I did after school, I was not very clear what I wanted to do with my life. As I say very often, I knew where I would end up. I knew that I would end up like my father, my grandfather, my great-granduncle, eventually in public service because I'm an only child. I didn't have any siblings. And the weight of responsibility was embedded in me, maybe by birth, maybe by environment. So I tried to find as interesting and diverse a set of things to do as possible on the way to getting here, and to defer getting here as far as possible, because I felt I had to achieve a lot of things, see the world, prove myself, learn a lot, and only come to public service when I was ready, which is when I was, content, when I was aware of who I was, and didn't really feel the need to have any super achievement after that. Because, politics is a very difficult business. My father entered politics at the age of 35, expired in office at the age of 74. And I would say it was not a pleasant or a smooth ride. And so, the two downsides of politics most people don't realize is one, the lack of privacy. Once you get into this, you are continuously in the public eye. And that comes with some costs that most people don't realize when they think it's just fame. And the second is that nothing is ever, smooth, of course, in any part of life. But in politics, the highs and lows are very, very high and low. I was reminded of that 2-3 days ago when the only two chief ministers I had known, or three chief ministers, one of them had passed as an opposition MLA, and the way they used to be treated with deference and kind of almost obsequious bowing, now are sitting in the opposition benches, and the whole kind of the environment has changed, and so now we are sitting in the treasury benches, and in 5 years it might be the other way around. So politics is a rough business in some sense, and you better have your ego well under containment and well under satisfaction before you come. So I tried to do as much of that as possible. I studied a lot. I did a bunch of consulting. I worked as a trader and in trading management in investment banking, then ran some offshoring for Lehman, then was in Stanchart as a commercial banker and a kind of the interface of commerce, commercial banking and investment banking. Ran some global markets operations globally across 60, 70 countries for a while, and then came to politics. So roundabout.
Thanks, Thiaga. The question I have for you is, can you reflect a little bit on, being on top of the world when you finished college and having many job offers, and then having to experience being in the Twin Towers in 9/11? I remember calling you after that session, so if you can just...
No, the irony was when I was leaving college, a friend of mine said to me, a guy, Italian classmate of mine who's now CEO of one of these big, workspace management companies in the world. He told me, he said, Thiaga, already the last target was the World Trade Center. They're going to keep on going for that. But you have so many offers. You have offers from California to London to, to Boston, to every place. Why are you going to the one place that's the highest risk of attack? And almost as if the guy was prophetic, 2 months in. And in fact, till the Friday night, this 9/11 was a Tuesday morning. Until Friday night, we had actually all been in Windows on the World on the top floor of the North Tower for training. And the concluding dinner was Friday night with, if I remember correctly, Myron Scholes of the Black Scholes formula, the chairman of the firm, all of us global kind of recruits. And this Tuesday morning, this happened. So, I of course, I had already learned from Lovedale, as I've said before, that everything is temporary. One day you're lead dog, one day you're at the back of the pack. So in that sense, it was an extreme version of that. But at some other sense, it was such a wrenching tragedy because for a month on and off, we had been going there and we saw all the people who operated the lifts and who sold the bagels and all of this stuff. And so, it felt personal because everybody who was above the 83rd floor on the North Tower, who, when the plane hit, every one of them didn't make it out alive because it severed all the elevator shafts and steps and everything, the plane going up. And that I think was the hardest part to bear because I don't say this often, but I say it now. As tragic as it was that day, and as tragic as and I lived across the water. I lived bang across the water, and my apartment faced the Twin Towers. And so for 6 months or 8 months, not only was the smoke coming out of the site, but the screen on my window, I had a large French window, it was like a couple, maybe like 150 square foot balcony. The screens on those used to get the soot from that smoke. So it was a reminder every day this was going on. And I took it in my stride, and we all learned to be resilient and all that. And then for the 1 year anniversary, for the first time since I joined work, Lehman gave us the day off for the anniversary. And I was lying in my bed watching the TV, and they started reading the names of the people who had lost their lives. And I heard the name of the lift operator. I don't remember now what her name was. And I don't know, I just started crying. I just couldn't control myself. I just lay in my bed, and the tragedy of it all just came back, and I couldn't stop crying. And it wasn't during the 1 year. It didn't. I kept it under control. So I think the sheer kind of what can I say, the crapshoot of life. Anybody can be anything, any day. It comes, it goes. Of course, I was to experience the same thing again when my father passed away within like a week or 10 days of taking office after being in politics for 40 years, finally sitting as minister, and then, before he even reached home after the swearing and he passed away. So I think the lesson you take in life is everything is transient. Nothing is permanent. In a good way and a bad way. In a bad way, don't think that because you're successful or you're, in a seat of power that, it's permanent. And in a good way, that no failure is irrecoverable, no downside is forever. There is redemption as long as you have life and hope. There's some redemption. It's only the sheer finality of death that is really the devastating outcome, and I think that's what I took.
Oh, thank you for that, and that really touches upon so many things. I have a third question for you, also linked to your professional life. Those of us who knew you or know you very well have heard of your Lehman Brothers story. I'm the last one leaving this room, and I'll put the lights out. We would love for the OL community to hear the story directly from you.
Yeah, well, I think, September 15, 2008 was Monday morning for us. And all through Sunday, I ran at that time for various reasons, which maybe we'll get to, maybe we won't. But I had asked to resign and come to India, and Lehman had said, don't do that, go and set up an operation for us. So I was in Mumbai as an expat for Lehman Brothers, running some operations. And there were two companies for which I was the sole resident director. And so it was my responsibility eventually when the bankruptcy happened. So because of that, people were continuously keeping me in the loop. And the general counsel's office in New York was keeping me updated. And as on Sunday night when I went to bed, they said, we're close to a deal. Barclays will buy us and everything will be fine. Just like Merrill got picked up by Bank of America, the deal will be closed and everything will be fine. So I slept well. I got up in the morning. I came to the office, and I was sitting in my office. I got a call from the general counsel's office in New York, and they said, the deal fell through. Feds told us to shut this thing down, and we have to go to liquidation. And my legs and hands just didn't move, not because of the consequence of devastation of the loss and all that, but I had been in the heart of the beast when we did all the derivatives and the structured products and the tranches and the risk and the complexities of it and the problems with the ISDA contracts and the netting and the resolving. And so I knew there were trillions of dollars of notional risk on the bank's books that simply could not be wiped. And if you took away one side of a whole bunch of derivative contracts, the whole market would collapse. So this notion of liquidation, it was just mind-boggling. I couldn't understand how a world would continue to exist if trillions of dollars of market contracts just got wiped out on one side and the other side didn't know who the other side was, because these were all laid off, of course. but we had some long and some short. It's a technical issue, but luckily within 5 or 7 minutes, we got a call back and they said, oh, finally these guys got brains. They said, don't liquidate, go into restructuring. Don't go for chapter 7, go for chapter 11 or whichever the other way it was. And so then finally the blood started flowing. So I didn't know what to do because I had just expanded the operation in Mumbai by a lot. I had that year alone hired, 100 people, many from the IITs, IIMs, the premier colleges, the SRCCs, LSRs, Xavier's of the world, St. Stephen's of the world. So, I think, and I'll address this later sometime, but out of instinct, I went and I called everybody onto the trading floor. And I said, listen, I don't know what to say because I feel bad. I'm almost like the guy who ruined your careers. I brought you here. But the three things that instantly occurred to me, I said, number one, anyway, I was not supposed to be a banker. I think God already told me that when my father passed, I tried to quit, leave and said, come back. So I will walk at the end of this. Because of that, I say number two, if those who have offers walk, then the rest of it becomes unbuyable. So please stay. I commit that I will stay and I will trade us whole and make sure that somebody picks you up in a way that your careers don't get damaged. And then I will walk. And number three, I said, you are really talented, brilliant people. That's why we picked you up and we paid you 2x, 3x what the next trade was in the market for hiring. So in a way, as damaging as this is today, think about the long-term consequences. I'm seeing this at the age of 40 or 42. You're seeing this at the age of 20, 22, 23. You will get through this. You'll be fine. And for the rest of your careers, the resilience that comes out of going through this is going to be hugely beneficial to you. And so I think almost as a way of emphasizing that I would stay, I said, whatever happens, I will stay and I will take care of you. Either I'll sell this, it'll be fine. Or if we have to shut this down, then I will trade you in pairs, in teams, in blocks. I will get you all re-employed and then I'll turn the lights out and walk away. And I think I said this more out of instinct and kind of a sense of loyalty and commitment. But the irony of it was I finished the speech at, 9:45 or 10:30 or something in the morning. Between 10:30 and 6 p.m., I had 3 offers to go away as the CEO or at Deutsche Bank, at Credit Suisse, for their Indian, equivalent setups at BNP, something like that. But anyway, it worked out very well because A, I stayed, I kept the commitment. B, I lost nobody. We traded them whole. And C, at the end of it all, I got a walking away package, if you will, that I didn't dream I would get. After they offered me many options to say, and I said, I'm not interested because I don't have the faith in you. Then they paid me handsomely to walk away. So it all worked out for the best in the end.
Thank you, Thiaga. I think I have always known you personally as a person with a lot of integrity. And I think what we're since transitioning into the next session, I have a last question for you in this segment that what more, and I know you've given the answers in a few other interviews, but I think for the OIL community to kind of know what motivated you to give up a very successful professional career and enter politics despite the nature of current day politics. If you can just share your thoughts on that.
Well, as I say, I always knew I would come and I kept putting it off and putting it off. And to be honest, it was 2016 or never, in the sense that there was a natural kind of segue away from my career because I had an expatriate contract. Of course, I could have extended it, but I had an expatriate contract that expired around the same time. I had given a commitment to my leader and I had already declined 3-4 opportunities to come. And they were not going to keep asking me infinitely. So it just seemed like the natural time in 2016. I was 50 years old. I'd accomplished what I'd set out to do. It felt like the right time. And I came and I was lucky that people elected me. So.
Okay, that's interesting. And now we go straight to a topic that a lot of people brought up. We invited questions from all over the world and almost 50% of them were political, but we decided to sort of keep it a bit simple and focus on yourself as a person and as an old Laurentian first. That's what this is all about, right? But let's talk about leadership and politics. So the question here is, Tamil Nadu is in a precarious financial crisis brought about by increasing debt and the pandemic. What are the 3 most important policy changes required to improve this situation? And does this increase the pressure on you and the government to deliver results?
Yeah, I mean, the situation's worse than it's ever been statistically, quantitatively. But as I say, it's all relative. If I compare the situation of the government of Tamil Nadu to the government of India, for example, we are much, much, much better off. The debt to GSDP is about 26 or 28%. At the union government, it's almost 100%, 90-something percent. The fiscal deficit will rise to about 4.5%. At the union, it's going to be like 8.5%. Now, public finance is not the same as private finance or corporate finance. So it's a bit different. There's not really a risk of liquidity crisis like a bankruptcy or governments own huge amounts of assets. Some are easily liquidatable, some are politically sensitive, some are not. So if you have professional management and you have the kinds of tools and options at your disposal that a government has, then that's not the hard part. The hard part is the political leadership and the political will to get things done. So I think that's the part that you really need to focus on. And so at a professional level, at a quantitative level, at a financial level, I never had any doubt that this was fixable or turnaround situation could be effectuated relatively quickly, as I've said in other interviews, before this 5-year term is up. The balance sheet and the thing can look dramatically different, the revenues and expenditures. All that hinges on political leadership. So to the extent that the chief minister, is very clear and has the people behind him, and therefore gives us the shelter and the mandate to execute, then I'm not overly worried. I think there's so many things worth doing and there's so many things to do. I had an internal discussion with him, and then we later brought in some of the bureaucrats and all that. And I was very clear. I said, not only do we have a problem on the way in, as it is in the CAG report and in the 15th Finance Commission and the RBI, that we're probably earning about 65 to 70 paisa for a rupee we ought to earn as a percentage of GSDP. We have serious problems on the way out. We have serious problems in administration. But these are all fixable. So I would say the thing that gives me, the two things that give me the greatest level of comfort is there hasn't been a professional approach to this, at least in the last 10 years. And as a very, very senior bureaucrat, not in Chennai, but in Delhi, sent a very warm message when I got appointed, and he said, "Sir, you're the most qualified man to sit in the seat in my recollection for the job as a finance professional, and I'm sure that you will do a good job." So I have that confidence. More than that, I have the confidence that my leader is very clear that we are going to provide a kind of unprecedented quality of governance, and with that kind of shelter above me, I have confidence I can operate. I've talked a lot about the technicals, about the revenue, about the restructuring, about the assets. I'm not sure that it's worth going into that level of technical detail here. It's all published all over the place. So.
Thanks for that response, Thiaga. My next question to you is, as a global political, social, financial rule of thumb, younger adults tend to lean more liberal and left in their opinions and views. And as people get older, they tend to be more conservative to the right. I think you kind of reversed the trend a little bit as far as I have known you. Being a super successful young banker, you were probably leaning financially right. And now as an older political leader, you are probably leaning left. So can you please share your thoughts on on how you approach this?
Yeah, I'll just say 2 or 3 things. I think that's the old adage, right, from Churchill about if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart, and the other way around when you're old and all that. Mm-hmm. But in my case, I don't think it was so much left or right or capital or social. I think I was a cynic when I was young. I just saw so much of the kind of fake behavior that goes around politics and power when I was young, that I was quite cynical about human nature when I was young. And over the years, I became more and more kind of open-minded and less cynical, and had more faith in human nature. So I think that was a transition that was unique to my circumstances and the exposures I had in my life at different points. But I would say the big change for me, and And I'll say something that I haven't said publicly before. It took a lot of convincing to get Professor Duflo to join the advisory team that we put in. And we had a long conversation. We had multiple email exchanges and then a long 1 hour plus video conference call. And one of the things I said to her, which I meant from the bottom of my heart, and in the end, luckily, she signed on anyway for this plus other reasons. But I said, the first time it ever occurred to me that it was the state's job to take care of people. You know, I said, I came from a political family. I came from the Dravidian ideology. I understood what our role was because we were born well off and because it was then incumbent on us to help the society and all that. That I knew at a personal level. But this notion that what is really a welfare state? What is the state's job? And how do you define a civilized society by the fact that it takes care of its poorest and weakest? And in every society across all development levels, from the highest per capita income to the lowest, there are going to be people that need taken care of. And I forget what it was called, but at Sloan, if you have these one-off classes, they're called seminar on, as opposed to, with a course number and subject and, corporate finance and this, that, and the other. And so Professor Franco Modigliani, who's famous for much more, path-breaking work like the Miller-Modigliani theorem and the other things for which he won the Nobel Prize, he was in his 80s and almost couldn't speak loud enough. So they used to attach a mic and have speakers in the class. And it was something about a seminar on public finances and welfare state or something like that. And I took it, and it was transformative for me. He was old, he had to speak with this aide. But that 3 months or so of those continuous lectures just changed my whole way of thinking about life. And the fact that a compassionate society, a caring government is really the outcome of civilization. That's what we aim for. And that, the quality of a government or the quality of a society should be measured in the way the weakest and the most, disenfranchised and the ones with the differently abled are taken care of. That notion, I think, really changed my way of looking at life from a technical perspective, and that is what I try to practice now. And that's why I'm so happy to be what I'm doing, where I am now. As happy and as relatively successful as I was as a banker, I didn't get the kind of satisfaction as a human being that I get from the job, even as an opposition MLA, now let alone as a minister. So I would say, that probably changed my way of looking at things quite a bit.
Thank you.
Thanks, Thiaga. And just taking the same cue on the same line of thought, the second part of your answer, the question is, how will you reconcile or balance the need to financially support the poor and simultaneously grow the economy so that the poor eventually do not need government support, or as you stated here, state support?
Yeah, I don't think there's a conflict actually, right? And I think you have to define what your political philosophy is and therefore what your economic policies are. There is no society in the world where there are not poor. Even the richest countries in the world have some people who are poor. That's the nature of capitalism and free markets, is that it produces, differentiation, a pyramid, a hierarchy.
Yes.
And that happens everywhere. There is no, so even in the Scandinavian countries where they have high taxes and high public goods and services, they have some people who fall through the bottom, and they have people with alcoholism and mental disabilities and live alone. So the nature of society is that you simply cannot eliminate this need for support from a caring state. So I don't think there's a direct conflict at all. I think, in fact, it's the other way around. All over the world, those societies that provide, or those governments and those philosophies that provide a strong safety net, that have a liberal outlook, are the ones that experience the highest growth rates and the best quality of life. If you compare California and New York or Minnesota compared to the rest of the US, you will see that they have the best welfare programs, the best social spending, the best public spending, and they have the highest growth and the greatest economies and the greatest kind of innovations. If you compare Western Europe, Scandinavia, compared to, let's say, other parts of the world, if you look at Australia, if you look at Singapore. So I completely go the other way and say, if we design our policies right, and if we are a caring and compassionate government, and we design our economic policies to be inclusive, to provide the opportunity for all, to provide the capacity for social mobility based on talent, based on education. And that includes things like reservations, which other people may see as controversial, but our heart is in it, our soul is in it, and we'll continue to do it, because you cannot remove, millennia of social stratification with 50 years or 60 years of reservation. So if you do things right, there is no conflict between these two things. You will grow well because you take care of everybody, that includes the poor. And there's no society without the poor, absolutely none in the world.
Thank you for that, Thiaga.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thiaga. So my next question is, they say politics is an art of getting things done. Could you share your experience thus far?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best guy for that, because, I'm not as diplomatic or as nuanced as I should be. I'm growing, I'm learning. But I must say that one of the best courses I took in my whole 4 years of 4 degrees across 4 different majors and 3 institutions. Surprisingly, the course that stays with me a lot is a course at MIT from the literature department. Believe it or not, MIT has a very good literature department called Literature, Ethics, and Authority. Yeah. And it was a reading of the great texts all the way from the ancient classics in Greek and Latin, all the way to things like movies like Wall Street. And it was a way of thinking about what is power, what is authority, what is projection, what is exercise. Can you really exercise your authority and still retain power? These kinds of things. And it was very, very, very thought-provoking. And I try to apply as much of that as I can. And sometimes I'll just say, revealing a bit of a secret. Sometimes when I explode, it's not because I can't control my emotions. It's because I intend to explode, because I have a signal to send. And so, it's a fine art. I'm still far from, I need to be a lot more nuanced and reserved and measured, as many people have told me. Many well-intentioned people have told me. I'm trying. But in politics, as in anything else in life, winning takes care of a lot of things. Succeeding takes care of a lot of things. So you do some things well, you achieve outcomes, you break previous limitations, you create, and of course, all power comes from the people in politics, right? So, for example, one of the things that makes me really able to get things done is I say, openly, I stated I will not pay for votes. And I won by 6,000 votes the first time, and 34,000 something votes at 23%, which is like 4x what the party's average across Tamil Nadu was. That gives me the projection of authority. It says, here is a man from the people. I'll conclude by saying only one thing. At some point, I thought to myself, do I really need to go to electoral politics? Maybe I can just stay behind the scenes, because like my friend Prashant Kishore or others, surely I can be an advisor, consultant, a strategist behind the scenes. And I don't need to go into public life, because I told you it comes at great cost. You have to be constantly available. You lose privacy. You have a lot of other things. And one of our advisors, who was with us then and who's gone to the other side, and it's a revolving door in politics, and there are no permanent friends or enemies in politics. He told me, he said, Anna, there is no other authority in politics than saying the people sent me here. Says, if you don't have that, all these IAS officers and these appointees and the people say, hey, no, we know better. No, we have been doing this 30 years, 50 years, whatever. You say, listen, the people sent me here. That's how democracy works. I tell you, you do what I say. So that power is the ultimate power. So you have to get elected. And that's actually probably good advice. And that probably gets a lot of things done. So between the people sent me here and succeeding, success creates a lot of pathways for you.
So thank you for that, Thiaga. We have just one question before we end this segment with a question from the audience that has come in. How can the government help tourism after COVID?
Yeah, again, it's not my department, so I am very cautious that I should not speak for others. But I think that the Chief Minister's reply to the Governor's address, as well as the Governor's address, which the government writes and puts out as its policy view, talks a lot about creating new opportunities. Rohan, I think your mic is super sensitive. It's picking up the paper shuffling. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It's from heritage tourism to ecotourism, Tamil Nadu is blessed to have quite a diversity of ecosystems and also a lot of cultural landmarks. And so there's a lot of things that are on the anvil. I'm not so sure what the transition from COVID to normal looks like, because we have lost the opportunity. Had we focused on 100% vaccination like other countries have, our transition would have been smoother. So at this point in time, I'm not sure what the transition back to normal looks like. But whenever we get to normal, then we have a lot of plans, and I'm very comfortable that we will do much more than has ever been done, and that Tamil Nadu offers a wide variety of options in tourism, and we'll leverage those and achieve a lot of good things.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Thiaga. We are now moving into the third segment, which is linked to your personal life stories. Just as an aside on the tourism thing, I live in Kodai, so everyone's waiting for something positive to happen. The question here, it's a bit subjective, objective, I'd say. Clearly, the practice of current politics is far from the values a Laurentian is brought up with. How do you emotionally and practically bridge and or understand or handle that gap?
Look, I think everybody's values are different, right? And in every ecosystem, I'm saying in the corporate world, I saw people of different values. In politics, I see people of different values. And at some level, it's very hard to be judgmental, because when those of us who are born with privilege, and pretty much everybody who went to Lovedale is born with privilege, or at least gained privilege during the course of being in Lovedale and coming out. It's hard for us to look down upon others and cast aspersions on their morality or their value system. I think it helps a lot to know who you are and to be who you are. Mm-hmm. What helps a lot more than that is your connect with the people. I think despite differences in education, exposure, whatever, my great takeaway from these years in public life and going street to street and door to door is that human nature, the biological evolution of the gene pool, has inculcated in people the ability to sense who is genuine, who is a fake, who is standing for what. And the people are not saints either, right? Like the politicians reflect society. We don't fall from the sky or get dug up from the earth. So, the people get the representatives and the government they elect, and therefore they deserve the government and the representatives they elect. So I don't think you can kind of make this separation that somehow politics is a cesspool and society is fantastically great. Politics reflects society. But I think what helps a lot is for you to be clear about who you are and to continuously live those values and connect with the people. And in fact, the people will be accepting of almost any kind of person as long as you are who you say you are and you act according to who you say you are. So, it's hard for me to generalize, but I would say every story is different, every constituency is different, every case is different. But it comes from the people, it comes from your connect with the people, and there's all kinds of people in politics. There's all kinds of people in life. There's all kinds of people in corporate life. So I don't think politics is any different.
Thanks, Thiaga. My next question to you is, Lawrence has produced few political leaders. Looking back, could Lawrence have done more for you in preparation for this career? Should school do more in exposing or preparing children for the political responsibilities?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say, but I would only make one small suggestion, which is that we lived, if I look back at our time in Lovedale, we lived relatively in our own kind of bubble. In a cocoon. We were not even connected to the local community in a substantive way. Of course, the affinity based on the surroundings, based on the friendships, based on the relationships persists. So, for example, one of the departments I have is the planning department. And in the planning department is what they used to call the Hill Area Development Program or the Special Area Development Program. So I intend to take a lot of interest in restoration of the ecology of a lot of these places. And some of that was imbibed because of my time in the hills. But in some other way, I think many of us were not truly connected to what was the ecosystem around us societally, socially.
Yeah.
So I think what would help a lot is to get people more connected to society, both in the Nilgiris, where the school is, but also through internship and other opportunities with NGOs. And most of us come from privilege, and so we don't see enough of the full hierarchy or strata of society. And I think it would help a lot to have that exposure earlier on in life, and it would help shape people's views, right? And I think even for a guy like me, as I say, from a political family, it never occurred to me that it should be the state's job to take care of people. And so I think we should broaden the exposure.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Thiaga, and also good to know that you're going to take an interest in the hills. Here's this book you need to read, The Toda Landscape. We covered it a couple of months ago. Tarun, the question here is, what aspects of your life, I know you talked about it in a bit earlier on, what aspects of your life did you have to sacrifice and or compromise when you finally took the plunge into public life?
Yeah, I mean, relatively few. I think you lose privacy, you lose control of your time to some extent, you lose the ability to socialize as much as you would like to, and to attend as many functions, to travel as much as you'd like to outside of your state or your constituency. But I mean, listen, in the scheme of life, I have been incredibly lucky and blessed, and I have no complaints whatsoever. So whatever the minor changes in life, they came after I'd already enjoyed them to excess through the first 30 years of my adult life, from 20 to 50. And second, that the upside, the joy of being able to add value to people's lives and make a difference, and write something that gets into government policy or implement something that helps change the path of society is such a great gift and such a great blessing that, relatively speaking, I don't think there's anything worth talking about on the downside. There's some minor issues, but it's not worth mentioning.
Thank you.
Thiaga, thank you for that. But you kind of led into my next question is, and I think you partly answered it now, but I'd like you to have your words and say on it, which is, what would you like to leave behind as your life's legacy?
Well, I think I've been so blessed to have a range of opportunities and a range of experiences that I certainly never dreamt I would when I was growing up. And so I would like to be able to say that the added value of that reflects somehow in the society that I leave when I leave office. Somehow the difference, and I said this to somebody else earlier, I said, why I was successful as a consultant, as an Indian immigrant, independent consultant back in 1991 or 92, which, as you know, Kuti, was not as socially integrated in America as it is now. In places like Alabama, where the KKK still had, workers in the factory where I went as a consultant, was that people said, this guy is genuine. When I was advising my client, the unions used to say, get this guy, the American unions used to tell the American management, get this Indian guy to come and say it's okay, then we'll agree. They had that much faith in my integrity. And that I would not leave a place if the outcome was not evident into my eyes. Writing reports and saying this ought to change and all that is easy. Anybody can do it. I always focused on, when I leave a place, it should look different from the day I walked in. Otherwise, I have not added value. So you must see visible impact of the value you've added. So in that sense, I've been given an enormous opportunity in my wildest dreams. I didn't ask for this. I asked my chief minister to be given the temples portfolio because of my family's legacy to it. And instead, he gave me finance plus pensions plus planning plus personnel, administrative reforms. And it's huge. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. It includes the DVAC, the Public Service Commission, the Information Commission, the Lokayukta, the Planning Council. It's a humongous portfolio that I never dreamt in my life that I would have. And at some level, it's a bit daunting. At some other level, It's an unparalleled opportunity to make a difference and to bring the 30 years of professional career and the connectivity and the friendships and the relationships that were built over that time to bear. And so I hope that when I finish, people will say he made a difference, and then that he was here, change some outcome or change the path in a at least in a noticeable way. That's more than anything. That's enough for me. I don't.
Thank you.
Thanks, Thiaga. So something a bit more personal. Who inspired you in your early years, and what is the one learning in life that has stood you in good stead? And there are a couple of lighter questions like, how naughty were you in school, and what's the naughtiest thing you ever did?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer. I'm not sure I can answer the last question. Then I'll being in
Okay, so
public office.
that's an answer in itself, right?
Yeah. I would say I was nobody's idea of the most disciplined student in the world. So, or in the school, or in my class, or in my section. Let's leave it at that. Yeah. So, on the bright side, I would say, I learned so much. And if you go to one of the better kind of business schools or other programs in the world, they explicitly say you learn as much from your classmates and your peers as you do from the professors or the
Absolutely.
invited speakers and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So I would say a lot of life I learned, and I will take a couple of minutes here to just say something. I think this notion that everything is temporary, nothing is permanent. I learned. So many teachers inspired me. I've talked about this at OL Nations. I mean at OL Assembly. So I don't want to repeat that. But I want to bring up one incident, and it struck me just this evening as we were talking. One of my closest friends from Lena School to Lovedale to the years after was Kutti's cousin, my good friend Bopana.
Yeah.
Sadly, he's no longer with us. But we had a very strong friendship, and it spanned the years after we left school. Then when I was in REC and he was in St. Joseph's, and then I went off to the States and I came back, and I think the first time I met him, and I changed a lot after I went to the States. I developed a discipline for work. I kind of focused on outcomes. I was a pretty happy-go-lucky kid, as most people would say. At some level, I hope I'm not that different from the person I was at 25. At some other level, I'm a fundamentally different person at 25 than I even was at 18, because I developed a work ethic and a kind of focus on outcomes that I didn't have when I was a younger kid. But we were talking about something one day, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, do you ever do anything without thinking deeply about it?" And I said at the time, "Why do you ask?" He said, no, every time I ask you something, you're like, I can see all the gears turning in your head, and sometimes you answer, and sometimes you say, no, I'll let you know later and all that. So, a lot of us act out of our heart. We act instinctively, and you seem to always be thinking about it. And at the time, I wasn't sure if he said it as a compliment or a derogatory thing. But anyway, we were such good friends, it didn't matter. But I was just thinking about it earlier today, and I thought, the great value of thinking about things, the great value of contemplating, and I'll add one more thing. The chief counsel of Lehman Brothers, a very senior lawyer, we were in some 4 or 5 person mentorship program once, and he told me, he said, the value of time to think is so high that sometimes when I'm asked a question, should we enter this trade? Should we sign this contract worth 5 or 10 billion? Sometimes I'll say, I'll get back to you tomorrow. I don't consciously set aside time to think about it, but I know it's rolling on in the back of my head, and I go to bed and I go through. And sometimes, I have better clarity, sometimes I don't, but definitely I am more comfortable making a decision the next day than having to give instantaneous answers. But if I put these two together, the thing I would say that I really learned in all of this is, the more you contemplate, the more you think, the more you kind of do game scenarios in your head, the more you're able to do things like I did when Lehman went into bankruptcy, that within 10 minutes, instinctively, I said, I'm here, I'm going to take care of you, because I already know who I am. I've already thought through many things. I think a lot about things after they happen. Why did that happen? What is the takeaway? What have I learned? Who am I? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? So at some level, the more you think, the more you can act instinctively, because you've already thought through all these things at a later time. And I think, the luxury of friends who ask you those kinds of questions. And still, sometimes when I meet my old friends, because they know me, they know who I am and who I was. And so they don't have a problem asking me questions. And then when we were preparing for the session, I told you guys that one of the things I take with great pride is a friend of mine who took a different path in life once told me when I was a very senior banker making a lot of money, traveling the world, jetting around. I happened to stop at his house one evening while crossed over from a continent, and we were having a drink or dinner or something. And he said, Thiaga, what I like a lot about you is that you're the same guy you were that I knew 30 years ago, and you're not different. So as much as that is important to me, it is the inputs of the people who know you, your character, your history, the kinds of things they ask you to think about, that really helps shape your thinking. And the more you think, the more you can act instantaneously. And very often, especially at the levels of authority and position that we are now, we don't get these, I'll think about it, come back to you tomorrow, right? The discipline you learn from being a trader is when the phone rings, you have to either, buy or sell, and you have to give a two-sided market sometimes, in which you have to skew the market towards the direction you want to go. So, you give a bid that's way off the market and a offer that's close to the money because that's what you want to do. So this contemplation helps define and speed up action when the time comes. And I think that's really the kind of thing I've learned in life, and mostly from my friends. Sorry if that was long-winded. But
No. That was a perfect answer. And I wanted to thank you very much for, leaving people with that message, bringing my cousin Bobs up, who I personally have a lot of regard for. I know you do too. And he's an extremely intelligent person. So I'm glad he asked that question of you that influenced you to become who you are now. I have one more question to ask you, which has come from the audience. And it says, which staff member has, and this has come many times, many people have asked this, what staff from Lovedale has influenced you the most, and in which way?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to pick one. I think I've said this before, right? I still remember all the way from prep school to many teachers, my housemaster, B.L. Singh, Mrs. Enos, of course, Mr. Raghavan, in junior school, the math teacher, also my housemaster, Mr. Vaidyanathan. Teachers, though I was an irreverent student at the time, and though I was not anybody's idea of a well-behaved boy, I have great respect for people who teach, right? I mean, the ability to spark interest in a mind, to spot talent, to vest yourself in the development of others is such a noble profession and a noble pursuit that I have great regard for so many. I don't think it would be fair for me to name one. I'll just say that throughout my life, both formal teachers, in the many universities and colleges and schools that I studied, but also almost every really impactful high achiever I've ever met in my life, I've taken away something, or at least tried to take away something. The real value of going to an MIT or a Harvard or a Stanford is not the technical education. You can get that, particularly in the age of the internet. You can pull it up on the screen in any place. But the people you get to meet and the people you get to hear from and the minds you get to kind of observe up close or do a Q&A with. And I think those are really the advantages of what these exclusive institutions provide, because they create a little ecosystem around them. And every time I meet somebody, I try to take something away. And that has helped me in my life, I think, a lot. Of course, we'll see what I achieve, and then we'll know whether it amounted to anything or not. But I think you learn all the time. You learn from people, you learn from events, you learn from analyzing outcomes after events. You learn from comparing outcomes to whether you expected them or not. I'm in politics. I do a lot more post-poll surveys than most people. I do a lot more data analysis after the election than before the election. And we learn a lot every time. And so I'm curious. I mean, I'm perpetually curious. I want to know more. I want to learn more. I want to understand more. And it's helped me a lot. And of course, teachers are a big part of that. Achievers that you meet are a big part of that. Your friends are a big part of that. Every human interaction adds some value. At the end of the day, that's really all. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, the ability to tell and hear stories is really the basis for almost everything in life, from politics to finance to relationships to everything. Long after the richest people are forgotten, the big writers will be remembered, the big playwrights will be remembered. And I think those are the things that I stay in my mind, that it's about ideas, it's about stories, it's about relationships.
Thanks, Thiaga. We have lots more questions. I feel bad we can't get to them, but we are up to our 1 hour time limit. So in conclusion, I'd like you to know that you have a lot of goodwill in your Laurentian family. We're extremely, extremely proud of you. And we'd like you to prevail. If ever you are unfairly attacked, we'd like you to never give in. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much for this time, and I'm so happy to connect with old friends. And I do a lot of these, but none that mean as much to me as this session. So thank you very much for having me.
So thanks, Kuti, for that. Thiaga, before you go, I just have one, if you have a minute or two.
Sure.
The concept of OL Nation was knowledge sharing, thought leadership, mentoring, and also connecting batches. As you know, we are very batch centric, and it's a lovely relationship we have within our own batches. But what we've done over the last 1 year and beyond is to connect, and we've also connected with Lovedale 2 ways. Do you have a message for Laurentians, the young kids who have suffered actually over the last 2 years because of, lockdown and so on and so forth, and of course, young old Laurentians and the Laurentian crowd as a whole? Is there any specific message you would like to pass on to them? Right now I'm just looking at the screen. We've got 51 folks on Zoom and several on the other channels. Anything for them, please?
Yeah, I would say that times like these are unprecedented, right? It's easy for some of us to say this too shall pass, which of course is true, but you have to first go through it. So as difficult as these times are, and as weighty as they may seem, especially when you're young and you don't have the self-confidence that you will get through this and achieve what you need to achieve, human nature is infinitely resilient. And, if we look at our ancestors or if we look at our society, we have gotten through a lot worse than this and come out better for it. So I would say that try and focus on the good things in your life. Try and focus on the opportunities that such a lockdown or a constraint or a lack of economic activity provides in terms of spending time with people, reading, contemplating, writing, thinking about life. And there will be a better day, because there always is. And nobody's life is continuously smooth. Nobody's life is continuously ascending. There will be ups and downs. Some of us see the downs later in life and the ups early. Some of us see it the other way around. Some of us see up and down if you're in politics. One day you're opposition MLA, one day you're not elected, one day you're minister, one day you're back to not elected. It just goes around and around. So as I say, and I say again, no success is permanent. In fact, success is very debilitating if it starts making you think that you're invincible. The more you succeed, the more careful you should be that you don't cut out your feedback loop and you don't get that you get reality checks on a regular basis. And no failure is permanent or not recoverable from. Everything is recoverable. Every setback is temporary. And what it should do is tell you, never give in. Nobody said the world was fair. Yeah. Nobody said it was even. We are, relatively speaking, a very privileged group, those of us who got to go in and come out of Lovedale. And so we are starting off better than many in life. And even if the temporary situation seems bad, and it is, I'm not taking anything away. Surely there will be better days, and you don't give in to them.
Thank you so much, Thiaga. Thank you once again for all your support over the last several weeks and for being with us this evening. Laurentians, that's Dr. Palanivel Thiaga Rajan, Finance Minister, all Laurentian. Thank you so much and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. There we have it, folks. That was a great session. We kept to more or less an hour. We are respectful of your time nowadays. And we'd just like to remind you that OL Nation runs on the 4th Saturday of every month, and OL Assembly, of course, is on the 2nd Saturday of every month. Do follow, like, and subscribe to the OLA social media channels. We have YouTube and Facebook and so many other things like Twitter and Clubhouse. These days, something for everybody. As usual, you have any ideas, drop us a line. Thank you very much and have a great evening.